Speaking of Nintendo Switch Online, a new game was just added to the Game Boy Advance Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack app, and that's Wario Land 4. And we shouted it out at the end of last week's episode saying that we're going to check this game out over the next week, so play it if you want to come here and talk about it, having played it over the last week. So hopefully some of you out there did. I had this game on 3DS because it was part of the Nintendo 3DS Ambassador program, the apology gift that they sent 10 GBA and 10 NES games to any 3DS owner that bought it in like the first 6 months. And that was funny because they never sold GBA games on 3DS separately from that. That was the only way to get Game Boy Advance games on 3DS. So I played this a little bit 14 years ago in 2011 when I got that on 3DS, but I didn't remember much of it. And revisiting it this time, oh my goodness, I am completely in love with Wario Land 4. I think it is just, it's one of my favorite platformers now. I think it is an essential Nintendo game, and I'm really excited to talk about it. And Reb, you've been singing its praises for years, and so I want to go to you first. Did you revisit it at all on Switch Online yet, or are you just talking about it from your original experience?
I beat the whole thing already.
Nice.
I got back.
Me too.
I got back. I was in Osaka. I got back for one day, and then I left again to go to Dice Summit. It's a conference in Las Vegas, and I got back Friday evening. Put down my luggage, ate my dinner, and then immediately started playing.
That's so great. Nice.
I love this game so much.
And Jada and Seth, how much did you guys get a chance to play of Wario Land 4 here on Switch Online?
I am very early. I think I'm like 3 stages into the Sapphire room, which is one of the 4 pathways. We were talking about it. Yeah, we were talking about in on our planning meeting yesterday. And that's really cool. It reminds me of old school like Mega Man games, which I absolutely adored and loved. And so I love that just ability to kind of go wherever you want to go and kind of do that. Even though it doesn't really do the Mega Man thing of like, oh, you beat this boss, you get bonus powers. Right. Or maybe it does. I haven't gotten that far.
It doesn't.
I don't think it does. I didn't think so. But yeah, I'm liking what I've played so far. It's definitely very different for a platformer.
It is, yeah.
As somebody who, who's mostly, for Nintendo platformers, it's usually the usual suspects. So it's very different, but I do like it. I like Wario's moveset, so it's a nice change of pace.
Seth, how about you? How much Wario Land have you played?
I think I played for like an hour and a half last night, having never played this game before.
Cool.
And I gotta say, pretty glad that I didn't play it on a Game Boy Advance with a tiny screen, because this is absolutely gorgeous.
Yes, it is.
It's so colorful and beautiful, and the animation is really, really good. He has like 8 frames of animation for just like his walking. It's just super good. I will say one thing, and I'm setting it up like it's negative. This feels like the most late life Sega Genesis game that Nintendo's ever made. Like,
I feel that.
It has that complete vibe on it. Completely weird. Not at all what I was expecting. I was expecting just kind of a straightforward platformer with Wario. And instead I get this like really weird, I don't even know how you would describe it. It's weirdness.
So let's set the stage a little bit for what this game is, because it is completely bizarre. It is one of the most unique platformers I think Nintendo has ever made internally. So this is Wario Land 4, which feels, like you said, you called it a late Sega Genesis game. I think this feels like a late Game Boy Advance game with how much it is pushing the tech, but it's early. It came out in 2001, not that late into the GBA's life cycle. Yeah. It was developed by Nintendo R&D 1, which is like the original Nintendo studio. We're talking Gunpei Yokoi developing the Ultra Hand toy that they sold in toy stores before they even made video games. That's R&D 1. They made Arcade Donkey Kong. Miyamoto worked in this division. And this was one of the last games they ever made before it was dissolved and restructured and the company underwent changes. But so a very historic Nintendo studio that made this game. It was directed by the same guy who directed Mario Paint, Hirofumi Matsuoka, who's no longer at Nintendo. Fun fact, he is now the senior creative director on Pokemon TCG Pocket, which is all the rage right now. So that's where he's at.
Wow.
What a great portfolio.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, seriously.
And here's where I think it gets really interesting, because I played this week and I kept thinking how much like WarioWare's personality it feels. It totally has that wacky, quirky, just weird off-the-wallness that WarioWare has that other Mario properties really don't. This game predates the entire WarioWare series, but 2 people that are on the credits for this game, Goro Abe and Ko Takeuchi, This is the first game they worked at Nintendo, and they are still the leads on the WarioWare series. So the chief director
Wow.
and the character designer of WarioWare. So they went from Wario Land 4 straight into the first WarioWare on GBA, and you can just see that DNA in Wario Land 4.
yeah.
And it is so wacky and so weird. It added the rush to the exit where you're exploring these kind of Metroid-like levels and finding all the treasure they have to offer, and you have to find 4 gems to unlock the boss at the end in each level, and you have to find a key to unlock the gate to the next stage. And once you're done with that, you find the end, the timer, you hit it, and then you have to get back to the start of the level. So you're playing the whole level and you're kind of trying to get acquainted with it, knowing when that 5-minute timer shows up, I'm going to have to haul to get all the way back here. I'm going to have to go through this door, drop down this ladder. And it's just a really unique style of gameplay that Pizza Tower does, Anton Blast does, but it started here in Wario Land 4.
Yes.
And it's just so magnificent. I'm just completely in love with it.
Yeah, that the frog timer sound effect, because he hits it, there's like a click and then a clock sound, and then you hear Wario go, "Hurry up!" And then the music sets in, and like that has haunted my dreams for years. Like the frantic energy of, oh crap, because they also like there's all these blocks throughout the stage that when you hit the timer they'll flip, so certain passageways will open that weren't open before, and other ones will close off to you. So sometimes you have to take a totally different route. There's some stages that change completely. There's at least one I can think of that changes totally when you hit the timer and just has a completely different theme and everything.
I think we can share it. That's the fire and ice one you're talking about.
Yeah, the fire and ice stage. Yeah, like there's a stage you go through that's like magma, volcano. All the enemies are fire themed. They're throwing fire rocks at you. Everything's fire. And then when you hit the timer, the whole stage freezes over. All the enemies start throwing snowballs and ice at you. Everything becomes really slick. All the spouts of fire freeze over into like frozen platforms. So some of them block off passages, but other ones you can jump on top of and get to places you couldn't get to before. So you're like Logan said, you're actively thinking on the fly as you're going through the stage, like, okay, you're planning, this is how I'm going to get back, but then the stage changes, especially in like the later levels, and so you have to suddenly like throw your plans away and take whatever route it's offering you and hope that it works out.
Yeah, it's just really cool. And we got a question actually from Cal on Blue Sky about Wario Land 4, who asked, does Wario Land 4 suffer from Seinfeld is unfunny due to games like Pizza Tower and Anton Blast? Does it still hold up on its own? I completely think Wario Land 4 still holds up on its own because Anton...
what is this Seinfeld isn't funny thing? I've never heard this foolishness.
I guess the concept is like it's sitcoms have come a long way or whatever. I think that's what they're getting at, but I don't know. I don't know Seinfeld very well.
I would agree.
I think it's still really good. I actually think so. I've been a huge Wario Land 4 fan for so long, and I have now played a little bit of Pizza Tower, and like a pretty significant amount of Anton Blast now, and I like both of those games quite a bit. They feel a little bit different. They both feel faster. They feel more frantic. And Wario Land 4 has that franticness, like when you're running back to the start. But I would say the first half of each level, when you're on your way to the timer, is slower. Like you're not... Jada, you and I were talking about this at the start, before we started the podcast. Like, you're not doing super complex platforming. You're not like...
No.
You don't have like this fast momentum. Like, Wario's a big guy. He's like punching through blocks and he's, crashing down on things. He's got like a lot of power behind him, but he's sort of, moseying on through pretty slowly most of the time. And so I really love that about Wario Land 4, and it feels very different in that regard to me than both Pizza Tower and Anton Blast, which are very speedy games.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, Wario Land 4 all the platforming feels a lot more deliberate, and not to say that Pizza Tower, Anton Blast, their platforming isn't deliberate as well, but it's more, the pacing is more deliberate, I would say, with Wario Land 4. There's a lot more of dodging enemies and such, and like maneuvering so you can take out enemies that'll be in the way, whereas with Anton Blast or Pizza Tower, it's just like, hey, just have the speed and kind of run through them.
Momentum.
And so and that also is, and that's, like you said, like we were talking about with the timer, that's kind of the second half of Wario Land 4. It has that kind of manic, chaotic energy going for it, where it's just like, hey, sprint through as fast as you can. Don't worry about like, killing all the enemies. You just need to get back to the starting point. So
yeah, and I think that is exactly what you were just saying, is that Anton Blast and Pizza Tower, I like them both a lot, but they both feel like follow-ups to Wario Land 4, which they are, and they take that rush of the end and incorporate it across the entire gameplay. Pizza Tower is about momentum and speed and combos and Sonic the Hedgehogging your way through these levels. And then it even incorporates like shine sparking from Metroid, where when you charge up your dash, you can then crouch and then you've saved this super jump you can do. It's just like Super Metroid. And then Anton Blast is about destruction and chaos and all these elements on screen at once. And Wario Land 4 has both of those things in its sprint to the exit, but it's very kind of plotting and methodical and relaxing almost before that point, before you hit the frog timer and all hell breaks loose. It is very chill, and the soundtrack plays into that too. There's a vocal track in here on the Game Boy Advance.
I did not expect
great.
at all.
Yeah, they crammed it in here.
So much better than I would have expected a video game on Game Boy Advance to sound. It's not, I mean, the bit rate, the sample rate's pretty bad, but it's not like awful. It doesn't sound like an AM radio in an old like Buick or something.
No.
But it's like stylized, like they know that it's a GBA, and so it's kind of it's of its time in a really pleasant way. Like it has this like really retro graininess to it that's just it's so fun to listen to. I love the first level that, well, you can do them in pretty much any order, the passages, but most people go to Emerald Passage first because it's directly to the right of the intro level.
Pro tip.
And go to Emerald Passage first. Yeah, well, I think the game wants you to because it's fairly easy.
It's
like
easy,
those levels are the easiest ones. But
oh yeah, you have no other choice. Never mind. I'm sorry.
It's got like you'd expect from a game like this. Like, so, I don't know what sort of soundtrack you'd expect, but what you hear in that first level is not what you'd expect. I think it's this like very mellow tropical thing, and then it just has this woman's voice come in and go, "Hello there," and then start singing this really gentle song. And it's so good. It's so good.
This is I don't know if this is a good phrase. This feels like the most indie game Nintendo's ever made. They just threw so many weird, wacky ideas in this. You can just tell how passionate the team making this was. And it was a very small team too that worked on this game. And they just threw everything at the wall. And the sound design in this stuff is crazy too. So when Wario rolls down a hill, which is one of his abilities, which is very fun to try and solve puzzles and find secrets by finding a little ledge that you can crouch on and cause Wario to roll into a ball, and then he'll just barrel across the level. When he's rolling, the music picks up tempo naturally. And then when he stops, it goes back to its normal tempo. And I was listening to that, and I was thinking, am I going crazy, or is it picking up tempo? So I look it up, and I find this video that I want to give a shout out to. It's on YouTube. The channel's name is Geno7, and the video is called The Bizarre Music and Sound Design of Wario Land 4. And this is a 50-minute video that I watched last night about Wario Land's 4 music.
It's really good.
It's unbelievable, and the video is great, and it dives into a lot of the philosophy and inspirations behind this. And basically, the guy that made this video tried to find all the inspirations in the soundtrack, and there's like Herbie Hancock in this thing. There's like jazz and soul and funk sampled in Wario Land's 4 soundtrack. It's an unbelievable soundtrack. And then the collectibles in each main level is a soundtrack record that you then go to this sound museum to listen to, and you would think, oh, this is going to be, I can listen to the game soundtrack here. No, this is 16 original compositions that aren't in the game itself. It's bonus music you unlock and just listen to. And it's weird, and it's
weird,
ambient and creepy and just strange. And yeah, there's so much stuff in this game that just, to me, makes it just, you have to check this out if you like Nintendo games. To me, it just is essential.
This was the game that a very small handful of people just really wanted to make. Like this was what they wanted for themselves, and it like this is such a testament to what having a clear and ambitious and personal vision for a piece of art looks like. Because like an algorithm could not make this.
No. And I want to
one of the things,
go for it, Seth.
Well, I never played this before. I didn't have much of context for it at all, other than I knew that like Reb really liked it. And so I was sort of surprised when like the first, like a mountain gorilla threw a coconut in my mouth and I got all fat, and I was like, oh, come on. That's annoying. I was like, wait a minute. No, he has to do that so that I could break the brick where I otherwise wouldn't have been able to reach. And the same with the bees. When I first got stung with a bee, I was like, oh, this is so annoying. Now I'm like floating around. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute. But you also like, you take damage, right? You have to take damage to blow up as a bee
I don't think you actually do
floating.
take damage.
No, I
He
don't
just
think
looks
you
like
do.
he's
Well,
in
whatever-
pain, but yeah.
like, I didn't. I would have never thought
Yeah.
that was a part. You know, I just love that you
just-
have to sort of get these enemies to attack you in a way that then allows you to progress through the level. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
the
was
little
very-
secret like robot monkey guy who, when you go into like a secret level, you have to like kick him around and bounce off his head.
Oh, the
and do all
professor,
this other
yeah.
stuff with him.
You're
Yeah,
just-
the professor.
yeah. You were
There's
so mean
also
to him
just
in
a
that
bunch
game.
of goofy gimmicks across all the levels. So there's like a level that is themed after a board game where in order to like
So
at different
cool.
points in the level you have to hit, like a little like progression board, like a board game will appear at the bottom of the screen, and you have to hit a switch to determine how many spaces your little icon is going to move. And depending on what space you land on, there are certain effects, and you want to get certain effects in certain rooms in order to unlock secrets, but you have to finish the board game in order to finish the level. So there's a point when you're racing back with the frog timer like going off where you just hit and you run into an infinite switch and a wall blocking your progress, and you just have to keep hitting that switch until your little icon gets all the way to the end of the board to finish it. There's a level
my
themed
God.
after pinball where you're zooming around like a pinball. There's a hotel themed level where you're just popping in and out of rooms
That
the
one's
whole
fun,
time.
yeah.
Shoot, what else? There's so many just bizarre things in here that are so much fun.
There was
And-
the stages I played, like it was the transformations were like very horror themed, so it was like
Oh,
I
yeah.
transformed into a zombie, and I was like, oh, I can't jump because if I jump during the section as a zombie, I fall through the ground here. It's the only way to drop down to lower levels of this area. And then like I was extremely confused when I got transformed into a bat and I was flying around, and then I just
Yeah.
transformed back, and I was like, why did I transform back? And I was like, oh, I have to avoid the light sources. This
Yeah.
is kind of cool. Like this is very weird and wacky, and like that's just kind of Wario. Wario is just a very weird and wacky dude, and his power sets kind of match it in this game. I absolutely adore it.
I think
Yeah.
my
And I
favorite
won't spoil this one.
transformation.
Oh, go
Go
ahead.
for it. I think my favorite transformation is it's the one where Wario gets set on fire, because at first just his butt is on fire, so he's running around like crazy trying to put it out, and you can still jump in that phase of it. But then eventually he turns into just a ball of fire, and he moves very slowly when he's this flame before he shakes it off, and then apparently is just completely normal. And so it leads to these puzzles where you have to set yourself on fire, and then in that 10-second window where you're running around automatically, you have to jump up to the place you need to be when you turn into that flame so you can burn down whatever wall you need to progress through. Just really, really, really smart puzzle design, and that's one of the best examples of it.
Yeah. I was just gonna say one of my favorite levels is the last one, and I won't spoil this one
Oh,
because
yeah.
I do think the surprise of it is really, really good. But the way that level plays with what you're expecting when you first enter,
It's
and
great.
then surprises you is really, really good. It's really good.